Sounds
All
good.
right. Good afternoon, everyone. And by a minute, sorry, we're a minute late. We were having some technical difficulties getting started. I'm not sure if the chat is for everyone, so I'm going to post a question, or if only the Q&A is. So I just posted in the chat. Can you see this? And I'm curious if it's only to the presenters. State of Vermont folks can see it. Thank you, Emily. And somebody from outside, also excellent. Okay. I was unsure of how the distinction between the Q&A and the chat are. So welcome, everyone. Hopefully you can see the screen. We started a recording, so if you either have to leave early or you know someone that would benefit from this, and I know there's been some interest, we will make the recording available through a website called ready.vermont.gov. So stay tuned for that. After the fact, thank you all for letting me know that you can hear it. We're going to get started with the presentation, but a little bit of housekeeping before we do. We'll start with introductions. On the team online today to present to you, we have Carrick and Mike Wilkes from our partner vendor, Cogent, who is going to do the bulk of the presentation today. We also have Callie Audat, grants superstar from the Department of Public Safety, here to answer questions that may go down the specifics of how the grant works from both the federal government and the state requirements. And myself, if we've got anyone else on? Oh, David Kaiser. Before I go to myself, David Kaiser, the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer. So anything that's security and kind of programmatic related, David's here to offer his insights and maybe answer some questions. And then myself, Sean Naylor. I'm the former, I should say, retired State Chief Information Officer and Secretary of the Agency of Digital Services. Came back in a limited capacity to assist with a number of public-facing cybersecurity programs. One of those is the Cybersecurity Advisory Council, and then the other is the State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program. And that grant program is what we're here to talk about today. We have, in essence, about 14 months to finish out a federal fiscal year 2022 grant that we received to provide cybersecurity improvements to local government. And that's what we're here to talk about, is to go through the three planned programs that we have, answer any questions folks may have, encourage. At this point, there is no obligation until we know what we have for interest and then match it with our final RFP results for funding to know what our limitations are going to be and how many can participate. But showing interest is not at this point, does not commit you to anything down the road. So I think I'm going to pause right there and look to the folks that I've been working closely with on the administration of this in Callie Audat and David Kaiser and say, is there anything either of you would like to say before we turn it over to Cogent and start talking about the why and the value of the projects and programs we're going to talk about today?
Hi, everyone. This is Callie Audat. I don't have anything further to add at this point, but I did want to thank everyone for joining, and we appreciate your time. We know it's over the lunch hour, so thanks very much.
And this is Kaiser. So same, thank you much for being here and appreciate getting your feedback once we have completed the process.
Thank you, David. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our partners at Cogent to kind of walk through the presentation, and you'll get little bits and pieces from me. I'm going to do the color commentary, not the primary today. So, Mike, you want to take it away?
Sure, you can hear me? Yeah,
We can
you
hear
can
you
hear me?
fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Kartik, can you hit the next slide? So by means of introduction, myself, my name is Mike Wilkes, and I'm working with Cogent to help execute the grant program, which has three offerings that we've emailed folks about. And I think most of you are probably here due to that outreach. And we have folks signing up and indicating which of the three, or all three, or two out of the three that they're interested in participating in. One of my primary assertions of identity when I join a call and say who I am is that I teach cybersecurity at NYU. So I'm an adjunct professor. And I also, this semester, am teaching a class at Columbia University. So I'm a 30-year cybersecurity veteran who has built, a lot of the internet over the years. One of my claims to fame was working in San Francisco during the dot-com bubble and leading a team that gave birth to Starbucks.com and giving them their first website back in 1998. Also did PlayStation.com for Sony and for Macy's e-commerce and Blockbuster, and lots of really fun. Those are the heady days of the internet 1.0. I like to refer to it as the roaring 20s of my generation. But now with my gray hair, I'm giving back, and that's one of the reasons why I teach, and one of the reasons why I'm excited to be working with the state of Vermont on this project to help improve the security posture of state and local government through the grant with CISA and FEMA. And so what we have here is just a couple of talking points to sort of prime you thinking about the why this program exists and what we're hoping sorry, what we're hoping to achieve with your participation to distribute the grant money to the eligible entities, local government and agencies. And so I'm not going to read the words in front of you. I hate it when people do that in terms of slides and presentations. But we do want to help protect data, increase public trust, and protect the services of your organizations. And so that's one of the reasons why the grant offering for this particular grant is a link that I published or put into the chat. If you don't know about the grant offerings, you can definitely go to that page and bookmark it. Kartik, next slide. So what does the state and local cybersecurity grant program enable? In this case, this FFY22 funding is to help people migrate to a .gov domain. Instead of running in a .net or a .org or a .com even, there's protections and trust that come from moving your organization to a .gov. And some of you are already on .gov, and so that one doesn't apply. But there's also a trust factor, of course. People can have much simpler rules on their firewalls and on their email to allow emails in from your organization if they come from .gov domain. And so Vermont.gov, for example, makes it through into most people's inboxes. But if you had vermont.state.vt.us, for example, that one might not have a good spam reputation or might not automatically show up in your inbox. And of course, lots of organizations have set up their domain names before maybe they had an access or awareness that they could get a .gov domain and to get it without having to pay. And so that's also a cost-saving opportunity. The second offering for this program is MFA. MFA stands for multi-factor authentication. And we'll talk about why MFA is an important protection, but in general, it allows you to avoid a lot of spam and business email compromise and account takeover risks. Multi-factor authentication is usually done with an SMS code or some type of authenticator app running on a mobile phone that gives a second factor of verifying who you are. And it stops a lot of attacks, a lot of malware attacks, a lot of phishing attacks, almost to the degree of like maybe 92%. According to some of the research that I'm aware of. And so it is one of the most powerful mitigations to keep your organization safe and to help people to not have to have a ruined weekend or week or longer due to a breach. Let's see. Security Plus. So the third offering is training. And of course, it's important to have some type of certification that you've done the training. And so what we've done is we've secured the ability to deliver CompTIA Security Plus training and a voucher to take the exam. And so that will allow you to level up yourself or others on your team that are interested in achieving this training. It's really great in terms of the introduction to how to operate computer infrastructure, whether it's a couple of servers underneath your desk in an administrative office for the town or city, or if it's cloud-based infrastructure. Security Plus and the training from CompTIA is an excellent baseline for folks that want to level up and gain not just a familiarity with cybersecurity techniques and defense and resilience capabilities of software, and of course having a good process in place to make sure that if somebody does show up on a Zoom call with a deep fake, that you know how to potentially ask them to verify with an out-of-band request, and make sure that people are properly registered for meetings and to be able to discuss things in privacy when you're on security calls for the government work that you're doing. Next slide. So starting with the .gov domain, this is administered by CISA, and that means that there's an extra vetting process that goes through. So when you think about these check marks, that sort of have like a seal of approval around them, the blue trust mark, this is an important visual and technical control. And so a lot of organizations can move to .gov. It takes a little bit of effort in terms of what kind of assets that you have, if you have a simple web page or if you have multiple web services. So this is a project. This is not just a check the box and suddenly you're migrated to a .gov domain. And so we have an RFI and RFP process in place to get implementation partners to work with you when you sign up for this benefit for this offering. And then that project plan will be put together to assess the scope and level of effort. It could well be that there's only 2 or 3 domain names that you're operating. One of them might be a help desk system for people submitting support tickets. Another one, if you're a larger town or entity or city, you're clearly going to have a larger digital footprint, and that's going to be a larger scope project. But we do have the resources and expertise to help you do that. Of course, instant credibility comes from that .gov domain, and the truth and identity and veracity of your services and your messaging and the contents of the web pages that you publish and the web services that you provide to your residents, citizens, and visitors. I think that was a great trio that I heard from the Chief Cyber Officer of New York State, Colin Ahern, because it captures all of the possible people that might be visiting a web page or web services for a local government entity, visitors, residents, and citizens. And of course, like I said, the costs are offset, so you can avoid having to pay that $15 a year for a domain name registration, although some domains are more expensive. Certainly, people that have .com domains, you might actually be able to migrate and avoid a larger expense with your registrar. And of course, these registrars, the ones that aren't operated by CISA, that operate the sort of domain name trust of web pages and host names, like ready.vermont.gov or nyu.edu. The registrar themselves are an attack vector. So if you went cheap and you went and got a GoDaddy, I'm not disparaging GoDaddy here necessarily, but GoDaddy has been breached, and they have had threat actors break in and take over domains because they wanted to be able to do scams and man-in-the-middle attacks, as they're called, or man on the on-path attack is another way to refer to it. Anyway, so it's useful to make sure that you have a trusted third party that is the one that's administering your domain. And so having CISA and the federal government and Department of Homeland Security doing that is an excellent leveling up of that security protection, of that trust. And of course, a lot less phishing attempts are going to be coming in because when you register that .gov domain, there are certain DNS verification tools called SPF, Sender Policy Framework, DKIM, DKIM, and DMARC, that are used to verify that only emails from the trusted senders for your organization are going to show up. So these are client-side protections that allow people to reject spam emails and impersonation emails and phishing emails, and they never even show up in a person's mailbox if those controls are added. So that's a little bit into the weeds, a little technical. I'm not sure how many folks on the call are familiar with DNS and domain name system security settings, but I thought I would mention it in case you recommend a colleague to watch this that is one of your technical colleagues for the organization. Next slide. So multi-factor authentication is by and large one of the most powerful and easy, actually, steps to take to mitigate risk and to have a resilient email, a resilient infrastructure for you to operate. Multi-factor authentication can block all sorts of secondary activities by threat actors. So, for example, when a threat actor is able to phish someone, they get that person maybe to give their credentials. They're given a link. The link looks exactly like a Microsoft Azure, login, like their normal, Windows kind of authentication. They type in the credentials, but unfortunately, those credentials get captured by a threat actor or a bad actor, or even sometimes a bored teenager that's doing it for the lulz. Unfortunately, that's part of our concern these days as security officers. We have to worry about nation states, organized crime, and bored teenagers doing it just for bragging rights in school. But anyway, multi-factor authentication is the thing that stops that from getting beyond that initial compromise, right? Patient zero, the person that aberrantly or had poor judgment clicked on an email, entered their credentials, or even went to a website that was able to steal some of their authentication tokens from their web browser, for example. A lot of times when you click a checkbox and say, please remember me, it's setting what's called a cookie. And that cookie is stored in your web browser on your laptop or on your computer. And that cookie can sometimes be stolen when you visit a malicious website. So multi-factor authentication stops that. So this is, like I said, one of the strongest mitigations we have to stop bad things from happening. So passwords, single factor, right? Username and password, not enough. If you're familiar with multi-factor, there's basically three kinds of factors that can be used to authenticate who you are when you log in. One of them is something that you know, which would be a password, something that you have, which might be an RSA dongle or your phone with a MFA authentication application running on it. Or other types of things. Like I have on my keychain, I don't have it with me, but a YubiKey, which is a USB authentication device. And these pass keys are a second factor. And then the third factor that can be used is biometrics. And a lot of people are familiar with this if they have a touch sensor, right, to log in on their computer, or if they use facial recognition to sort of log in and wake up their mobile phone. So that any one of these three factors can be used. And technically, it's possible to have three-factor authentication or four-factor authentication. But really, just getting from single-factor to multi-factor or two-factor is really the large step that helps, again, block adding this extra layer of security, making it harder for attackers to gain access, even if they did have the right credentials. And again, I don't know if I mentioned, there's a website called haveibeenpwned.com, and it contains evidence of breaches, right? Maybe it was an airline loyalty program. Maybe it was your gym, your fitness, your membership for your gym. That website, the people protecting your password that you set there, may not have the best security. They may have been breached. They may have been phished, right, into a ransomware attack. And all of the passwords of all of the users for that loyalty program with the airline or the gym membership have been published on the dark web. I think there's, I want to say, probably like 150 billion credentials on Have I Been Pwned? Let me just double check real quick. Have I Been Pwned? It has 15 billion passwords and records. And they don't, of course, publish those, but you can actually go there and enter your email address, and it'll tell you, because it's a safe website to use, because it doesn't store the information or capture it. It'll tell you whether or not your email address has been a part of any of these kinds of breaches. And it's not your fault, right? It's the gym that got breached or the airline. and the people that operate their loyalty program. So anyway, one of the reasons why it matters, of course, passwords do and will get stolen, and other forms of authentication tokens, like I said, stored in web browsers and elsewhere. So having that second factor is great. And we can roll out a program for you to introduce MFA for all of your users, or at the very least, for the people that have administrative privileges on the computers. These are what called the administrator, domain administrator, if it's a Windows infrastructure, or root users, as they're referred to on Linux infrastructure and computers. So it's a quick turnaround, it's easy to deploy, and your security posture immediately goes from terribly weak to terribly strong. So that's one of the reasons why this was included as one of the offers to use with this grant money, because of the effectiveness of introducing MFA. And let's see what else. Even with a leaked password, access is denied, right? Because it makes that second call and says, okay, prove to me that you have a certificate that was loaded onto a USB stick, or you know what code to type on your authenticator app. And so many of you are probably already familiar with multi-factor authentication. So adding that to your entity, your local government and state agencies, is definitely a great use of the funds for this program. Next slide. And of course, I don't know. I guess I'll go one more rabbit hole technical depth on this one real quick. So in computer technology, there's something called the OSI model, which is different layers of technology that implements what we call the internet. And at like layer 1 and layer 2, it's like copper and wires, and it's the physical layer of the network. And then it works its way up at an abstraction from data to presentation layer. And then you see web pages. That's it, what's called layer 7. But what I often refer to, all kind of humorously, is something called layer 8, which is the software that lives in our minds, between our ears. This is the gray matter. And this is the part that often gets fooled and attacked by threat actors, the human element. And we're fallible, right? We make mistakes. We have poor judgment. Maybe we start the day and we haven't had our cup of coffee yet, and an urgent email comes in and you click on it, and then you think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, so one of the things that can be a great investment besides multi-factor authentication and a .gov domain is to train people and to give them a skepticism muscle, and to build up that muscle, and to understand how technology works and how the internet works and how computers work, and how there are tools and processes that you can learn to be a part of your staff and a part of your operations that will further protect the organization. So we can't just rely on tools. Tools alone, they're necessary, but they're not sufficient. To be completely necessary and sufficient, we need tools and we need training. And so in this case, the CompTIA Security Plus builds up that expertise for you or for people on your team. Like I said, technology alone is not there. I like to joke that there's two types of security people in this world, pre-breach and post-breach. Everyone that's ever been through a security incident or a breach, and previously I was the CISO at Marvel, where I like to joke it was my job to keep Iron Man safe. We had a security incident, and it was due to a third party that was operating an account for Daredevil on the Netflix website. And they got phished, and they gave up their credentials. And this is not material non-public information. This was all something happened back in 2018 or so, if I remember correctly. So it's not sensitive data, but it's just an example from my own experience. And so that person was breached, and that person, had their account taken over, and we had to deal with the impact of that, right? We had to recover the account. We had to reach out to Twitter and other social media accounts and have them give us back control of the account. Now, thankfully, it wasn't a threat actor. It was actually what you might call a gray hat hacker that was doing it to say, hey, you really should have multi-factor authentication turned on. And again, this is like 7 years ago this event happened. And it was still, an important factor of security control back then. And so I think the name of the threat actor group, or the hacker group that was in this sort of gray space between white hat and black hat, was called CrowdMine. And they're ones that guessed what was that Mark Zuckerberg's account was on Twitter, because Mark Zuckerberg didn't use Twitter, so he set a really weak, dumb password. Someone guessed it, and they took over his account. This particular, actor group, and they do it also mostly for raising awareness, right? And then, of course, maybe to get some money out of it. So there might be a slight, charge or cost, that they would recommend on hacking you again and seeing if you've actually closed the door on that vulnerability. So anyway, we provide a foundation of cyber defense knowledge, and so you get a voucher to take the exam. And I think the vouchers usually run about $400, $500 just to sit the exam. A lot of people take this security training on their own, but having it paid for by the state of Vermont or through this grant through the federal government and FEMA and CISA monies is an excellent way to just sort of raise the bar collectively for our resilience against these kinds of attacks and against, like I said, social engineering and understanding how to detect a deepfake video. Oftentimes the deepfake video does not blink. So I'll hold my eyes up here and blink a couple of times so you know that I'm actually human. What else? The observed impact, it strengthens your daily hygiene. And what's nice is you can have a training of trainers models as well, meaning you send a couple of people from your group to the training, and they will indirectly educate the people that they work with after they've completed the training. They might not get the certificate, but it will rub off, right? Education and knowledge is infectious in that regard. Next slide. So 3 outcomes possible: trusted domains, verified access, and skilled people. And so we have the URL already in the chat for you, but here it is visually in case you're not accessing the chat and maybe you're just watching a recording later. Go to ready.vermont.gov / and this is all uppercase SLCGP-G and then lowercase RANTS. And so that is essentially what we wanted to cover. And I think at this point, maybe a little bit of sort of fireside chat with Sean and David would make sense, unless, of course, there are questions that people want to pose. Happy to dive into those right away.
Thank you, Mike. We do have one question posted, but before I get to that, I wanted to touch on something I think that is an often believed misconception, maybe, right? That in the cyber world, in the technology world, that it parallels like physical security for some reason. Meaning that if I am a small municipality in a very rural, remote part of Vermont, while I'm geographically hard to get at, and the likelihood of like our public water tank being attacked is maybe lesser than a large municipality serving a larger customer base or something. In the internet world, there's not that distinction. And I'm going to post in the chat something I was doing just a few minutes ago. It's going to be a picture. And all I did was an old command line, ping a destination. And doesn't matter the command, but what it does is it shows that I first started with Vermont.gov, which is the like overarching domain for like our websites and stuff like that, which would be a reasonable target, right, for any hacker to go after. And if you notice, we have an address that is, what is it? I'm having a hard time seeing it. All right, 199.107.32.183. Ultimately, that's all we're known as out there, our IP address. I did the same thing I live in the town of Worcester. And if anybody from Worcester is on, I apologize for using you as an example, but I know it, the website's address. One is it's a .org. But if you see it resolves to 162.255.163.21. And my point in putting this out there is that when it comes to the internet, kind of size, scale, geography doesn't matter, right? Sometimes these attackers are just going to start incrementing down through looking for vulnerabilities on IP addresses, right? And just start hitting, is this door secure or not? No, I can't get in. Oh, next one, I can get in. All right, what can I do when I'm in there? So there's this, I just want to kind of address that just because we may be often small communities, rural communities, the geography doesn't matter as much in the internet space as it does in the real world. And so just wanted to kind of share that, kind of bring it back around and be like, this is the kind of the implied protections we have for being small, rural, and remote often don't extend to helping us in the internet age.
Yeah, that's a great point because it is a common misconception, even among businesses, right? Even among people that operate critical infrastructure, like water treatment facilities and energy distribution centers and power plants. When I lived in Amsterdam, I actually built systems that control power plants for Nuon and Vattenfall and RWE. And a lot of this infrastructure should not be exposed to the internet. But there is a digital transformation happening. A lot of people are finding ways to improve the efficiencies, and to have remote access and control and reduce costs. But of course, that comes potentially with introducing risk. So it is definitely the case, like Sean mentioned, these two different IP addresses, these two numbers, right? They're called dotted quads because there are four of them, and there's dots in between them. That is IPv4, Internet Protocol version 4. And there are something like 3.7 billion IP addresses in the entire IPv4 network. And the routable ones are a little bit smaller. But basically, it's an address, and every address will be probed and prodded. And it'll be looked at port 80 to see if it's running a web server. It'll look at port 443. And again, every IP address has a range of ports that it listens on. Imagine the analogy here is an apartment or a building in a city. The address and coordinates of the building is the IP address. And then the first floor is maybe port 22, and the second floor is maybe port 25, and the third floor is port 80, and it works its way up. There's actually 65,000 plus ports. So every IP address is essentially a potential like 65,000 story skyscraper. And the hackers focus on this indiscriminately. And so they do not know if this is a Italian convent in Europe. They do not know if it is a small town in Vermont. They will simply look at it and see if they can find a way in and if there's anything interesting once they break in. And the mantra that is in cybersecurity professionals sort of religion, as we defend against these attackers, is it's not a matter of if you will be breached. It's really a matter of when and maybe how often. So, for example, T-Mobile unfortunately seems to get breached every 3 to 6 months. They have a bad security culture and it's very difficult. They have lots of IP addresses, lots of legacy code, lots of vulnerabilities. And a company like Mandiant or FireEye, it took the Russians like 4 or 5 years, right, to build a campaign called SolarWinds to break into one of their software suppliers. So they didn't even break into Mandiant or FireEye themselves. They broke into somebody that they rely on, and that was the SolarWinds breach, if you've heard about it. They breached software that Mandiant uses, and Mandiant, when they discovered it, they told the whole world. And that's how the rest of us found out about this, right, this SolarWinds attack and the cybersecurity supply chain. So that's one of the mantras. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so we really need to assume breach, assume that we will be compromised. One of the jobs I had, just to tell one more story around this kind of like likelihood of breach scenario, and just try to disparage the myth that being small, makes you not a target. When I joined Security Scorecard, which is a security ratings company here in New York, I was the first CISO, and this was back in 2020. This is about 5 years ago. And their business is to scan all of those 3.7 million IP addresses, just like a hacker would during reconnaissance phase, and to figure out what ports are listening, what IP addresses can be reached, and are there any vulnerabilities there. So this is open source intelligence. It's called OSINT. And so Security Scorecard would run an Nmap scan, it's called, across all of IPv4. And in a given week of scanning, it saw 20 to 30 billion vulnerabilities. Now, if I look at the security scorecard sort of results on the website now, that number has increased now to 230 billion vulnerabilities, coming back from the exact same number of IP addresses. So the exact same attack surface 5 years later is orders of magnitude more misconfigured and more vulnerable than it was back in 2020. And so that's something that we have to try to turn the tide on that with education, with MFA, with secure software development. There are projects coming up. I don't know if you want to mention that, Sean or David, that there is a second round that we're going to be publishing of grants and opportunities that take it beyond this initial set of 3 offerings that can help people actually get rid of some of their legacy infrastructure and migrate to the cloud, for example.
I'll touch on that in a second. Where I want to get, we're under 10 minutes remaining in the webinar, and I want to get to the questions here, and one of them will allow me to segue into that.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is from Timothy Williams. It says, is there a limit to the number of CompTIA Security Plus training and certifications an org can apply for and may be granted? So at this point, when we're trying to gauge interest, I would say that there isn't a limit. What is going to end up driving this is once we get our federal grant funds approved based on the projects, it's going to be roughly, Callie, correct me if I go too far off the rails here, but just about $2 million. We are then going to issue an RFP to get actual costs to deliver these things. And then it will be, we'll kind of have to work an equation, right, of interest from number of municipalities into which of the projects based on what we get for final cost to deliver. That may come back and say, okay, municipalities of this size, you can have up to 5 participants, or municipalities of this size, you get 3, or those are just arbitrary numbers. But at this point, I would say we're more looking to get the communities that are, at least at this point, intrigued enough to want to pursue this, to sign up, which will inform us in our federal request. So, and then we can figure out the details once we have more specifics, both on funding and cost of delivering the training. Hope that answers your question, Timothy. And if I mispronounce anybody's name, I'm notorious for that, so I apologize right now. I think it's Laura Fedorov, but I'm not sure. In a town of, and it's a C, and it just kind of goes into an ellipsis, so I'm not sure where. Her question is, we have already applied for and been granted a .gov domain for our new website. Excellent. We're glad to hear that. Moving in the right direction. Our security concern is the email that will be attached to it. Is there any funding available to help cover or even just help with the cost of email protection? That's a good question. The first 3 projects that have been approved both in the state and at the federal level are the 3 that we spoke of today, which is the .gov migration assistance, the multi-factor authentication, and the CompTIA Security Plus training. We are working on the next federal fiscal year wave of grant projects. I have identified 4 likely program offerings that we will be that we're working to provide, and those are for those that are kind of getting started on the cybersecurity journey. It's going to be like a training, education, and fundamentals program. The second level is going to be the risk assessment and mitigation. So having partners being able to come in, look at your specific environment, help you prioritize what needs to be done, and then staying engaged for up to a year to help resolve some of the biggest issues that are discovered as part of that assessment. The third project is a kind of a more advanced one, which is for those that are participating and have either like a security operations center or want to share log files, a collaboration and training of how can we work together in a constellation type environment to help protect all Vermonters. There's a number of organizations that kind of do this within their own space, and we're figuring out how do we work collaboratively in some of this area to better protect Vermonters' information. And then the fourth one is the one that I'm getting around to the answer, Laura, is one about upgrading infrastructure. So as part of a tier 2 risk assessment, a file server sitting in a closet in a basement is one of your top risks. Well, we want to be able to help folks move to, say, maybe cloud storage and get the appropriate protection. So when we're looking at that, that would be likely the program and service offering that would also offer email protection. So stay tuned on that. I think Cogent is working on the scope of those as we speak. We should be pursuing, I would say probably around the first of the year, we will be pursuing getting municipalities at least committed that are interested in one of those 4 things I've outlined. But those are the next year. We're focusing on this year's, which are the 3 projects we've presented today.
I threw out an answer real quick. I typed one out for Timothy's follow-up question, which was, are these grant dollars confirmed? Are they likely to be pulled, right? And rescinded, I guess. And I just indicated that cybersecurity is one of the exceptions to a lot of the cuts that are happening in the federal programs. And they actually came out with a 2025 SLCGP granting body of notice of funding for 91 million. So there's always the possibility to be surprised, but in general, it does feel like the monies to protect state and local government will continue to be available, and you've got to use it or lose it, right?
I think a couple of other things, Timothy. We have heard there is at least interest in extending this program past the 4 years that it's been funded for now. And I would say the other is when you look at the Trump administration's stated approach to what FEMA is going to do, what the federal government's role is in preparedness and response, it's less about doing it and more about being a pass-through for funding so that state and local government can provide those services closer to where the events are. So this program kind of aligns with what that stated expectation is. So our fingers are crossed that this is not going to get pulled back anytime in the near future, but subject to change. Bonnie Wenninger? Sorry, Bonnie. By expressing their interest, what is the municipality committing to at this time? Example, using staff resources or municipal funds. Towns are heading into budget season. If no commitments at this time, when will municipalities know their commitment may be? So that's a great question. For these first 3 projects, it is staff time. The folks at the Department of Public Safety, when this grant came out, I don't want to say this. Each year of the grant, there is a larger state match. Year 1 of the grant was 90% federal funded, 10% local. Year 2 is 80-20, year 3 is 70-30, and year 4 is 60-40. But Department of Public Safety sought out a waiver on the 10% match. That waiver was granted. So with these 3 projects, the municipality's cost is staff time, but no out-of-pocket paying for, UB keys for multi-factor authentication or licenses, or paying for training, certification, or even a portion of any of the .gov migration assistance and stuff. So at this point, they are of no direct cost. Your indirects are staff time to both assist and and help or participate in the training.
One last question. Can I become a .gov domain if I am a utility without a web page? Yes, I presume for email.
Yes.
That was Town of Cavendish unverified question.
Oh, okay. I said, I'm not seeing it.
I don't know. It showed up at the bottom instead of the top.
Oh, interesting. So, we are at time. I'm available to stay on if there are additional questions. If not, we will wrap this up. Who posts? Who is eligible for this grant? So, all right, I'm going to look to my grant administrator extraordinaire, Kelly, and help me answer this because it is local government, right? I think it's 80% has to pass through to local government entities.
That's correct. So local government is as it is defined in the Code of Federal Regulations. So that means a local municipality, a city, a school district, anything that in the Code of Federal Regulations is identified as a local unit of government. And I can put that in the chat for everyone to see.
Thank you, Callie. So as you can see, we can cast a fairly broad net as long as it matches the CFR definition. So. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. One thing that I do want to do is, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. And you're like, how do I do that? I am posting in the chat my email address. So it's sean.naylor@vermont.gov. Feel free to reach out with follow-up if there are questions or concerns, but if not, go if you're interested in sign up and we will include you as we move forward. And thank you, everyone. And
Thank you. And I want to commend the state of Vermont and the team that we're working with to do this program and to help us to administer it and get these funds to good use for your agencies and entities. So hats off to Vermont for embarking on this path. It's not easy.
So I wanted to quickly, somebody posted in the chat, Stacy Sargent, that they already do MFA and .gov. So how would this grant pertain to us? You're really, if there is interest in CompTIA training, that is going to Security Plus training. That is the only offering this go around that would be of value to you. But in future years, there will be additional cybersecurity services and projects. So hope that was the last of them.
Yep, watch this space. There'll be new opportunities coming online for you to participate in.
Yes. And thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Cheers.